everyone, this is Kenneth the K-Rock Cline coming to you with episode 43 of Krocking, Locking, and Dropping with the K-Rock. And folks, going to be a bit of a short episode today, but again, as always, you can watch this episode on my YouTube channel, KWCLINE91, as well as my Spotify and Podbean. Yes, that's where I post all my podcasts and everything. Folks, I got to be a little honest. It's going to be a short episode, as I said, because there's only a few things we need to discuss here and there. But you know what, folks? I'm just going to get my thoughts out in the process. For starters, I recently came back from a trip to the University of Texas covering our Lamar women's basketball team. Great time, great experience. The outcome of the game, not so much. Didn't quite go according to plan. Had a rough first half, but we did play better in the second half. And yeah, definitely a great experience playing in Texas. Great city. I love Austin. In fact, if I had to come up with a top 5 list of Texas cities that I would love to live in, other than Houston, since I'm trying to be a little bit favorable or unbiased here, Austin would probably be number 1 or number 2 on my list. It would either be Austin or San Antonio or Corpus Christi. So that's something for another time here and there, or maybe throw Galveston or Alpine. Well, I don't know about Galveston because that might be considered in the Houston area as well. But anyways, folks, enough about Texas cities for now. We got a couple of sports things we need to discuss. Of course, I'm going to be talking about the upcoming Monday Night Football matchup between the Texans and the Cowboys, and how I think that if the Texans were to win, this could potentially turn their season around, and hopefully they do, whereas the Cowboys are under a lot of pressure for this Monday night. We'll get into all that. I'll have my NFL picks for this upcoming week, so you will not want to miss out on that. But first, folks, I got to tell you about the sporting event that I just saw, or sort of had a little bit of trouble seeing. I mean, I was supposed to be watching this boxing match between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. Yes, Mike Tyson, the former heavyweight champion, one of the greatest boxers of all time, taking on YouTube sensation Jake Paul, who has had a knack of going on this undefeated run, going up, knocking out all these fighters, or taking on these, so-so fighters for that matter, trying to up his resume, and somehow finding himself undefeated still. I mean, he's already taken on Nate Robinson, former NBA player, and he won that. He's won a couple of other fights against some average boxers. He even took on Floyd Mayweather Jr., who is undefeated. And, of course, that fight, I think, ended in a draw or something to that effect. But now you got Jake Paul going up against Mike Tyson, and that was supposed to be streamed on Netflix. And everyone was kind of excited. It was going to be kind of weird. But there was a little bit of hope that Mike Tyson would come out of retirement and would knock out Jake Paul, or at least shut him up for all that Jake Paul has said and everything, and being a YouTube star that has turned into the boxing ring. So there was a lot of hope for that, and everyone was excited, yet Netflix suffered a big loss because it had some streaming services, and fans were not too happy. I mean, you look at all the tweets on that. I made a tweet commenting on that situation. I said, no Netflix, no YouTube stream. I'm only left with my imagination as of right now. So I could only picture how the fight was going to go. There was a part of me that was thinking to myself, man, I'm hoping that Mike Tyson could win because, I have such a great respect for him. I know that he was one badass boxer that went ahead and just, knocked out a lot of people. He started off his career 37-0 before he ended up losing to Buster Douglas in an upset fashion. Then he ends up getting himself in trouble. He comes back to the ring, and he ends up going on another undefeated run from the start, but then loses twice to Evander Holyfield. Actually, he got himself disqualified after biting off part of Evander Holyfield's ear. That's a whole different story for that matter. And then from that point on, it just seemed like he went on this downfall for the rest of his career. And so Mike Tyson came out of retirement to fight Jake Paul in an exhibition match, 8 rounds, 2-minute rounds, not 3 minutes, 2 minutes. And everyone was tuning in. There was going to be a big deal on Netflix and everything. And, well, I'm going to be real honest with you people. Years from now, Eddie Murphy in my opinion, is going to come out with Coming to America 4.5. He's going to be redoing the iconic barbershop scene. Like, you remember Coming to America when Eddie Murphy, playing one of his many characters, was in a barbershop scene, and they were talking about who's the greatest boxer of all time back then. And then Eddie Murphy's character then was like, oh, Joe Louis is the greatest boxer of all time, and this and that, yada, yada, yada. And then this one white Jewish guy, played by Eddie Murphy, I might add, says, what about Rocky Marciano? And Eddie Murphy goes, oh, there they go. There they go. Every time I start talking about boxing, some white guy got to bring Rocky Marciano out of his ass. That's the one. That's the one. You know, and then, of course, they brought up the point that Rocky Marciano did beat Joe Louis, but Eddie Murphy's character says, Joe Louis was 75 years old when he fought. And, yeah. No, I think that's going to happen. I think they're going to come out with another 4.5 episode, or 4.5 movie of Coming to America, and they're going to recreate that scene, and instead of saying Joe Louis was 75 years old when he fought Rocky Marciano, they're going to say Mike Tyson was 75 years old when he fought Jake Paul. Because, my goodness gracious, we did not see that. I mean, Mike Tyson was 58 years old, and yet he didn't have that same intensity. He didn't have that same fire. I mean, from what I'm seeing, Mike Tyson really wasn't doing much of anything. I mean, sure, he got his shots in, but it wasn't enough. And I felt like the judges' scoring might have been too favorable to, Mike Tyson at times because, because of his legacy and because of what he meant to the sport of boxing. But, I mean, come on. Mike Tyson couldn't do anything. Like, seriously. We know how Mike Tyson would have fared against Jake Paul if Mike Tyson were in his prime. Mike Tyson was not the same guy that won the heavyweight championship at 18 years old, youngest heavyweight champion ever. This is not the same guy that started 37-0. This is not the same guy that, had the bad reputation, biting off part of Evander Holyfield's ear, causing some chaos and everything. Like, this is not the same guy. And yet, here he is in the ring at 58 years old, going up against Jake Paul, who, look, you could say what you will about Jake Paul, whether he's a real boxer, whether he's not a real boxer, but Jake Paul has been developing his boxing skills, even if it's only for showmanship. And he has been dominating well. He's younger, he's fitter, and the guy, proved that. And, from what you could see, whether you saw it or not, it's just one of those things that is just unfortunate that we're never going to be able to see from Mike Tyson again. Like, this is why I feel like Netflix took a big loss. The whole fight was a disaster in the making. Now, maybe there was a reason why fans had trouble with Netflix because of the buffering and the streaming issues. Maybe that was a sign that you shouldn't have Mike Tyson and Jake Paul go into the fight because of what was going to happen. Only those that were in attendance that night at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, which will also be hosting the Monday Night Football game, that we'll get into that in just a moment. Only those in attendance got to see that, and I'm pretty sure they all thought the same thing. Mad, disappointed that they spent much of their efforts watching this fight unfold, and I don't know what else to tell you, folks. I mean, this is clearly, this whole thing was a disaster. Now, I mean, it's unfortunate that Netflix, has to deal with the ramifications of this because of the streaming, and I don't think that was their intention. The buffering, the streaming, that's a big problem. And now it's gotten me worried, now that I think about it, because Netflix is planning on broadcasting 2 Christmas games, the Chiefs and the Steelers and the Ravens and the Texans, this Christmas. And that has me worried that I'm not going to be able to see those games, stand out for that matter. So, I mean, I don't know what else to tell you, folks. What we saw or what we didn't see, what we could imagine, that was a fight that should not have happened. It was a disaster. And look, Jake Paul, even if he won this fight, is the biggest loser out of everyone. Well, actually, Netflix is the biggest loser. Jake Paul is the second biggest loser. Because here's the thing. If Jake Paul wins the fight, he beat up a 58-year-old man. He beat up a guy that was in retirement. Been retired from boxing for a long time. Or if he lost the fight, Jake Paul lost to Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was the greatest fighter of our generation. Yada, 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 you know. I mean, get real. Jake Paul was in a lose-lose situation. Some boxer, somebody needs to come out and take him on. I'm thinking Conor McGregor needs to go back to boxing. Like, take on boxing again. You know, McGregor actually fought Floyd Mayweather in like an exhibition or an actual fight. And that fight was a pretty good fight. McGregor did hold his own until Mayweather ended up winning by a technical knockout. But I really think that Jake Paul needs to fight somebody that is in the boxing ring or somebody that is fresh off of boxing. Canelo Alvarez is the one guy that I can think of at the moment as being arguably the best boxer out there. But I don't know if that's ever going to happen at this stage. So, I mean, it's a real disappointment when you see a guy like Jake Paul taking on, you know, Mike Tyson at 58 years old. What do you think what was this? A battle of the sexes match like Billie Jean King of 1973, who was the number one female women's tennis player, taking on a 58-year-old Bobby Joe Riggs, a former tennis champion himself, and it being in a sweep in a match. By the way, that match took place at the Houston Astrodome, and there's definitely talk about the Astrodome possibly being renovated or having some great ideas. We'll keep an eye on that as well for future episodes. But anyways, what were they expecting from this fight? What were they expecting? I mean, the whole thing, it was a train wreck. It was a disaster. And I'll be perfectly honest. I would never, ever schedule a fight between Jake Paul and a boxer who was either retired for a decade plus or someone that thought they could go into the ring and get him out. I'm not scheduling that unless it's a real professional fighter. Unless Canelo Alvarez or a boxer who has a legitimate chance to, you know, make himself really good. You know who I think should also step in? Like, get like Tyson Fury in the ring. Like, why not Tyson Fury? This guy should be in the ring. I mean, he was a champion as well. Why not go ahead and get him in the ring? I mean, yeah, the guy's like 36 years old right now, but come on. He should be a good guy to go in the ring against, you know? I mean, I'm thinking Canelo Alvarez, Conor McGregor, or Tyson Fury. Yeah, have those guys go in the ring and try to take out Jake Paul in a sense. So, give Jake Paul a lesson. But listen, I love Mike Tyson, okay? And I think everyone loves Mike Tyson. We know his struggles, and we know that he has worked hard to redeem himself after all the struggles. This does not hurt his legacy at all. But it's a bad look. It's a bad look for boxing. It's a bad look for Netflix. It's a bad look for Tyson. And whether he wants to admit it or not, it's a bad look for you, Jake Paul. So, I mean, you're going to have a lot of criticisms. There's definitely a lot of people that are upset with what they saw on Netflix. And it was a real disappointment, a real disaster. So, yeah, that's the way I look at it at this stage and at this point. So, there you have it, folks. That's my thoughts on the whole Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight. Yeah, it was not that good. So, but anyways, folks, we're going to step aside real fast. When we come back, I give my thoughts on the Houston Texans and the Dallas Cowboys upcoming Monday Night Football match. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.
Although, I guess if we root for the Texans, it doesn't mean we'd have to stop rooting for the Cowboys.
Well, they are in different conferences, so it'd only be a problem if they played in the Super Bowl. An all-Texas Super Bowl. His will be done.
I can already see what Hank Hill of King of the Hill is already thinking. The Houston Texans, Dallas Cowboys. That is a Super Bowl matchup that I know would cause a lot of division amongst Texans fans. There might be a civil war if there isn't already. But we're not at that point yet. We got ways to go before we can even think about that as well. However, Monday Night Football, the Houston Texans are taking on the Dallas Cowboys. And folks, I gotta tell you, I would normally be excited and hyped up for this match. Anytime there's a chance to beat a Dallas team, if you're a Houstonian, it's always there. And if there's ever a chance, if you are a Dallas fan wanting to beat a Houston team, that's just typical business and everything. But man, I tell you what, this is a game that I'm kind of looking forward to, sort of, if you will, but I gotta be real honest here. The excitement level for the two teams involved has kind of waned ever since the start of the season. Now the Cowboys are in a very difficult spot. On one hand, they are 3-6, which is currently third in the NFC East division behind the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. On another spot, they actually have to deal with the fact that Dak Prescott is out for the rest of the season after having surgery in his lower area. So now it's turning over to Cooper Rush, but Cooper Rush actually landed on the injury report for the Cowboys today, Thursday, and the reason for that is because of a neck situation that he had to leave practice for earlier, and he's still participating in practice, but there's definitely some concern amongst the Cowboys faithful as far as Rush is concerned. With Prescott out and Rush dealing with a possible neck injury, which the Cowboys have said that he is going to be good to go up against the Houston Texans, there's a concern from the Cowboys as far as, is this going to get any worse? Because for the time being, they have yet to win a game at home this season, and it's just not a good time to be a Cowboys fan, unfortunately. I mean, it's happy and exciting for everybody else since the Cowboys are struggling, but if you're a Cowboys fan, you have to be very concerned and you have to be very worried. On the other hand, you have the Houston Texans, who they're still in first place of the AFC South, but they have not looked like themselves from the start of the season, or they haven't lived up to the preseason hype. Last week, our last episode, I predicted the Detroit Lions to win, beat the Texans, but I did not think the Texans were going to get off to a strong start like they did. I mean, they jumped out to a 23-7 lead, and you're thinking, okay, the Texans are at least starting off very well. They played so well in the first half. They were the better team in the first half. They intercepted Jared Goff 5 times, 5 interceptions, which is a rarity from any quarterback. Usually a quarterback gets benched if he throws 3 interceptions, maybe 4, but 5 interceptions, and yet for Jared Goff to still be in there, it's just insane. But the second half has been the problem for the Houston Texans. And to me, I think a lot of Texans fans are very frustrated with whether it's the conservative calling of offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick or the offensive line having some serious issues blocking and protecting C.J. Stroud. I mean, we saw what happened with Titus Howard, who, he said he didn't mean to take the ball away from Stroud or cause the fumble, but in a way he kind of incidentally did, and that was really one of the big turning points of that game. But regardless, the Texans laid another egg in the second half, and the Lions came back to win 26-23. And, I was very upset after the Texans lost to the Jets, but I'm just at a point now where I'm like, man, what are you to do? Like, what are you to do if you're the Texans at this stage? You're 6-4, which is not the record. It's a good record for most teams to have, but, it's not quite the record that is eye-opening that will make you a Super Bowl contender. You may be fortunate to make the playoffs, but also the fact that you're 2 games up on the rest of the division. But the fact is, you're not playing well. Your offense is stagnant. You're having a hard time running the ball. You can't protect the quarterback. And your defense is only carrying you as far, and they can't keep this up. The Lions, they're the best team in the NFL right now. They came back to win. It wasn't the best game they played, but they found a way to win. And yet, now you're in a situation where if the Texans were to lose another game, there may be cause for concern and maybe start to focus on next year. Even worse, this is going to be the 3rd consecutive week of a primetime game, and you are already 0 for 2. You lost the Thursday night game to the Jets. You lost the last Sunday night game to the Lions, and now you're playing Monday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys, who are not at the best level. They're not at the peak. what are you going to do if you're the Houston Texans? You have to figure out a way to win this game. But, the Texans are sitting at 6-4, which is not great, but that's not to say that they can't turn it around and go on a hot streak, because you look at the Texans' schedule, after they play the Cowboys, they got the Titans and they got the Jaguars, the two teams that are worse in the AFC South. Teams that they should be able to beat. Not saying that they're gimmies, okay? There's no NFL game, regardless of record, that's a gimme. But if you're the Houston Texans, this is the game you have to win. This is a game that could turn your season around, because you have to go up. If you win this game, then you pick up 2 more wins. Guess what? You're entering the bye week with a 9-4 record, which, okay, you would rather be 12-1 or maybe 11-2, depending on the circumstance. But you are in a situation where you can turn it around at 9-4. Then you get a bye week. Then you have to go up against 3 juggernaut playoff teams, although I probably should say 2, because Miami has not quite been up to par lately. But after that, you have the Kansas City Chiefs and you have the Baltimore Ravens right around Christmas time, which these are arguably the 2 best teams in the AFC. Well, 2 of the 3 best. I think we got to throw Buffalo in there, as they are starting to, they're a strong team. And Buffalo will be taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, looking to end their undefeated start. But, if the Texans really want to be serious and they want to show that they are contenders for this season, this is the game you have to win against the Cowboys. But the problem is your offense stutters in the second half. You have not scored a touchdown in the second half since week 6 against the Patriots. That cannot continue. Field goals are not going to do you anything. You need touchdowns. You need to score touchdowns. And I don't know if it's just a case of, Bobby Slowick being too conservative on the offensive side, or maybe the offensive line just struggling, or maybe it might be C.J. Stroud. And this is what concerns me about him at times, because Stroud, he said, well, it's really my fault and everything, and I need to do a better job. Well, he hasn't quite played like he's very capable of. I mean, yeah, he's got similar numbers to what he's done last year, but it's hard to judge those stats from the naked eye, because the naked eye is seeing Stroud having some problems, and the offensive line isn't doing a great job protecting him. And I'm not saying all of it's on C.J. Stroud. I'm giving partial blame to Stroud here, but at some point you have to say that C.J. Stroud needs to start, getting better, or at least trying to elevate his game more. Otherwise, we might be looking at a quarterback that could potentially be the Dak Prescott of the AFC. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, Dak Prescott had this incredible rookie season in 2016. He led the Cowboys to, I want to say, the best record in the NFC, maybe the second best. I can't remember if it was the Cowboys or the Falcons, but the Cowboys had the best record, or one of the best records in the NFC, and that was all because of Dak Prescott, who led them there. And the Cowboys hosted a playoff game against the Green Bay Packers. They lost that game, but Dak Prescott won Rookie of the Year, and everyone's thinking he's the future. He's going to lead the Cowboys to the Super Bowl. Well, guess what? The Cowboys haven't been to the Super Bowl. They haven't been to the NFC Championship game since 1995. And this is why, you have to be very careful and you have to be very wary, because C.J. Stroud is still a young quarterback at this stage. So even though, the Texans are still a team, they're still the front runners in the AFC South right now, they're not playing like they are capable of. And for Houston fans, it's very frustrating. 6-4, it's not a good record if you're supposed to be a contender. Ultimately, you have to find a way to get themselves back on track. And if I were the Texans, I'd say, I am sick and tired of all that stuff. Forget about Bobby Slowick. We're going to do things our way. If we lose the game, it won't be because of Slowick. It will be because we did not do a great job. Defense has done a much better job of keeping the Texans in the game, but the Texans cannot capitalize. You have to play a strong, better game in the second half. And if I were the Texans, this is a game that I need to win. Now, you're going to go to Dallas. And while the Cowboys have not won a game at Arlington to this point, this is a game that could be another trap game. Because, again, Cooper Rush, he had a neck injury during practice. He was on the injury report, but he is slated to go. And if Cooper Rush struggles, they'll turn to Trey Lance. And Trey Lance, has had some experience in the NFL. I'm not saying much, but this is a game that if you're the Texans, you have to win. And I'm just frustrated over the fact that the Texans were expected to beat the New York Jets, but they didn't. What's to say that the Texans are going to easily beat the Dallas Cowboys, because the Cowboys are a team that can find a way to get the job done? That's the game that's scary. This is the game that the Texans need to win in order to keep themselves with a chance or to start something. Because I feel like if you win this game, as I said, if you win this game, you can win the next 2 games. No guarantees, but you can win the next 2 games. You go into the bye week at 9-4. And good news for you, Texans, you're getting Nico Collins back. He could have played in the last game, but, D'Amico Ryans has said that they decided to hold Collins out for one more game. It was a game time decision. He just didn't practice all week and this and that, which, I don't like it right now. I don't think it was the right decision at the moment, but maybe in hindsight it was the right decision. We'll see. But if I were the Texans, Nico Collins is coming back. You got to start using him. You got to start, capitalizing on your chances. Somebody else needs to step up and receive. John Mechie had a touchdown catch against the Lions. He did a good job against Detroit. But, man, you got to get your guys going. This is insane. You cannot afford to lose 4 of your last 5, because if you do, you are in serious trouble for that matter, and you're going to be fighting for your playoff lives. The only thing that could really be a saving grace if you lose is if the other 3 teams lose their games. But this is, I don't know what else to say. I'm getting kind of frustrated. I'm still confident that this team can win a Super Bowl. Maybe not this year, but at some point in the near future that they can. But ultimately, this is the game that I feel like if you're the Texans, you have to win. It's no ifs or buts about it. You have to win, or else you're in serious trouble. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Texans as well. But as far as the Cowboys are concerned, they're at this stage, they're just trying to play out the season. They're just trying to make sure that they don't lose any more guys. This is the game that Dallas is going to be looking at and treating like it is a Super Bowl matter, because it's an all-Texas battle. Dallas has had the Texans' number historically all time. We remember the last time the 2 teams met. The Texans were actually up by 3 points. This was when the Texans were really bad. They had a 3-point lead late in the game against Dallas, and it looked like they scored a touchdown on 3rd and goal, but somehow they were denied the touchdown as they were ruled to be short. They decided to go for it on 4th and goal, which is what I thought was the right decision, because if you kick a field goal, you'd be up by 6, but Dak Prescott, with him at the quarterback, you never know what can happen. And so they made the decision to go for it. They didn't get it, but they still had Dallas pinned deep in their own territory, and unfortunately Dallas came back to win the game. So that's one of those moments that has to happen. So clearly the Texans need to win this game. They have to beat the Cowboys. This is a game that could potentially propel them to the start of a hot streak, especially considering the rest of the schedule when you have 2 playoff caliber teams that made the AFC Championship game last year on your schedule. So it's going to be a dogfight of a game, but we'll wait and see what happens there. So I got my predictions as far as that game is concerned, and I will be making those on the next segment. So stay tuned, folks. We're going to come right back. I'm going to conclude my thoughts on the NFL with my Week 11 prediction. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, folks, it is time now for my NFL Week 11 predictions, and this is where I make my predictions for NFL Week 11 games on a weekly basis. Now, last week I ended up going 8-6 in the 14 games that were eligible, so I was able to eclipse 100 wins. I'm currently at 102-50, which is really great if you're a professional baseball team with a legitimate chance to win the World Series and everything. But anyways, it's time now for Week 11. Now, 4 teams are not playing this week. The Buccaneers, the Cardinals, the Giants, and the Panthers. So those 4 teams are going to get themselves a nice bye. Already we had one game that has been played, Philadelphia against Washington, and I actually picked Philadelphia to beat Washington because I thought Jalen Hurts could slow down Washington's momentum, and even though Hurts was appeared to be concussed, he was able to clear that and was able to get back into the game and lead Philadelphia to a comeback victory. So far I'm 1-0, but I mean, I'm not going to go much into detail on that at this stage. So with that being said, my predictions for Week 11. I'm going to start off with Miami and Las Vegas. And, it's not been really great for Miami this season. Neither has it been for Las Vegas. In fact, the Raiders are actually going to go with Gardner Minshew as the starting quarterback, while the Dolphins are still kind of struggling, trying to find its rhythm with Tua. I mean, at this stage, this has not been a really great season for the Miami Dolphins. Looking at their standings, they're 3. It's so crazy how the AFC East is right now. I mean, the Patriots the Buffalo Bills are 8-2, whereas the Dolphins, Jets, and Patriots each have 3 wins each. So, yeah, it's just not looking real good. But I think for this occasion, just based on where things are for the franchises, I'm going to say that the Miami Dolphins are going to get a win here. They're coming off a win last time, so we'll see if they can be able to get themselves a win. Cleveland and New Orleans. Now, that's a game that's going to be a bit of a challenge. I do think that the Saints are not having themselves a great year, obviously, because they're struggling, but I think the Cleveland Browns have a little bit more upside with Jameis Winston, who is still trying to get himself back on track. And plus, he's played in New Orleans. He knows the area, and I think this is a game that he's going to get a little bit of revenge on the Saints after, things didn't quite work out for him down there. So I'm picking Cleveland to win that game. Then you got the Indianapolis Colts and the New York Jets. The Colts are going back to Anthony Richardson as the starting quarterback. And, the Jets, as I said earlier, it's just not looking real great. They're 3-7, another big loss. And I think this is where Anthony Richardson has to show that he has the potential to be a franchise quarterback. Because you got to remember, a couple of weeks ago, he actually got benched for one of the dumbest excuses I've ever heard when the Colts played the Texans and Richardson had come out of the game for a period. And everyone was wondering, was he hurt? What happened? Did he get a concussion? What happened? And then he came back into the game. And then afterwards, he said, well, I was just tired on that particular situation, which is why I came out. And that's when the whole media blew up and Richardson ended up getting benched. But he is now back as a starting quarterback. And in spite of what I think Richardson will be able to take from this, I think this is a game the Colts should have with no trouble whatsoever. So I'm going to say the Indianapolis Colts will beat the New York Jets. So that's a game that will be a game to keep an eye on for. We got the Minnesota Vikings against the Tennessee Titans. The Vikings are still in contention for the NFC North Division, only trailing the Detroit Lions by 1 game. And I think, Tennessee may be able to get themselves out of a slump that they're in after losing much. But I feel like at this point, Tennessee is just about ready to pack it in. And so I'm picking Minnesota just based on the fact that the Vikings are, still able to get themselves a big W. Or hopefully get themselves back in contention for the NFC North. Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, oldest rivalry in all the NFL. And in this occasion, maybe a too common theme, but I feel like Jordan Love and the Packers will have just enough to knock off the Chicago Bears with Caleb Williams. And I tell you what, Caleb Williams has really been a bit of a letdown at this stage. I really thought he would be the best quarterback coming out of the NFL draft, but right now it's been Jane Daniels who has just been tearing up the league, having Washington in first place in the NFC East, whereas the Bears are just kind of, in the mix, or they're actually down at the bottom of the NFC North Division. So I think Green Bay will get this one in the bag. Detroit Lions and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, the Lions, you can't argue against them. They're playing the best team right now. They didn't play really well against the Texans, but, they had 5 interceptions. Jared Goff threw 5 picks, but the Lions were able to come back from 16 down to win. Disappointing loss for the Texans, but the Lions, you can't argue with them. They're the best team in football, and that's something that I think they're going to continue on and knock off Jacksonville. So Detroit gets a win there. The Rams and the Patriots. This is a game that is a bit of a tosser because, again, the Patriots are sitting at 3 wins, whereas the Los Angeles Rams are currently 4-5, so they're 2 back of the Arizona Cardinals. And I think this is a game the Rams will be able to get themselves going, and I think the Rams should have this one in the bag. Then we got Baltimore and Pittsburgh, the battle for AFC North supremacy for this season. And I always, the Steelers are having a real great season, surprising season to this point. But again, I do not want to underestimate Baltimore. They're a half game back, and I think this is a game that Baltimore should be able to take care of business. Lamar Jackson starting to turn the tides a bit. The Steelers have won the last 4 games, which is a real crazy situation given that Russell Wilson, for the time being, has seemed to have found his rhythm. But again, the Ravens, I think, will be able to get this one back. So Baltimore should have the win there. 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. And again, the 49ers, it's been a difficult, trying year for them. But I do believe that they can turn it around and get this one against the Seahawks. That's the game that I'm going to say that San Francisco should win. We got Atlanta versus Denver. And, the Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins, it's been a very, they definitely have had some big improvements from their season. But, to this point, as a matter of fact, the Falcons are currently leading the NFC South Division at 6-4. And, they're taking on a Broncos team that, Bo Nix has had his good moments and bad moments, and I do believe that the Broncos are going to give the Falcons a push of a game, but ultimately I think it's going to come down to, Kirk Cousins and finding ways to get Atlanta to win, so I'm going to say Atlanta gets the job there. Okay, the big game on Sunday Night Football. It's the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. Biggest rivalry right now in all of the NFL. I mean, here's the way the rivalry has kind of worked. The Bills have won the regular season games, but the playoffs have been a different story. Though, to be fair, the Bills' regular season games against Kansas City have always taken place in Kansas City. This time, though, Buffalo is going to be hosting the Chiefs, and that was, of course, the site of the game where the Bills had a chance to tie in the divisional round, but man, the 2 haunted words for Buffalo, wide right, are major problems and have affected them tremendously and miserably. So it's going to be a real telltale sign for the Buffalo Bills because, again, they're playing so well. They're currently 8-2, yet they have an opportunity to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs, the only undefeated team left in the NFL, and a little bit of pressure on Kansas City, but it's going to be interesting. And as much as I would like to say Josh Allen and the Bills get some form of redemption, you can't count out Patrick Mahomes at this stage. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs, they are not playing the best football as they have been, but that's not to say that they're not a resilient team. They are a resilient team. They're 9-0, so that's going to be a big win for them, for Kansas City, in my opinion. So I'm picking Kansas City to beat Buffalo, and the Chiefs should go to 10-0. Then we got the Chargers and Cincinnati on Monday night. The Bengals, it just hasn't been the season that they want. Joe Burrow's return has not really helped matters, even though the Bengals, they sit at 4-6, and right now the Bengals' hold of the playoffs is just slipping away, and I feel like this is a game that they have to win. But Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers just continuing to find ways to keep themselves in contention for the AFC playoffs. They're currently sitting at 6-3. Good turnaround for Jim Harbaugh in his first season with the Chargers. And I just think that this is going to be a tough one for Cincinnati to overcome. So I do think that the Los Angeles Chargers will get themselves a victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. And that leads me to the Monday Night Football game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans. And I talked about it in my previous segment. The Cowboys are going with Cooper Rush. They haven't won a game at home all season long. Texans, on the other hand, have lost 3 of their last 4. A team that is kind of at a crossroads, trying to figure out what exactly it wants to be, what kind of team they want to be. Do they want to be, focus on, trying to make something out of this year, make the playoffs, and maybe go on a run, or maybe start to prepare for next year because they've had to deal with a lot of injuries and some questionable offensive coordinating from Bobby Slowick and all that. And, I mean, you have a situation where this is going to be a very interesting game. Dallas is hosting the game, and this is where I have a little bit of a problem, folks, because I talked about this on my last podcast. I am 6-0 when I pick the Texans to win. I am 4-0 when I pick the Texans to lose. So I'm undefeated on both categories. And it would be easy for me to say, well, maybe I should stick with the Texans because, they're playing the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys have yet to win a home game. But that could change on Monday night. And it would also be easy for me to say the Cowboys could win, and then somehow the Texans would lose that game, and it would really make me more angry. And I'm in a really, really tight predicament here. And this is why I'm just getting a little bit upset and angry by this, because I feel like every time I pick the Texans, they win, and every time I pick pick against them, they lose. I mean, I wanted to pick the Texans last game, but I just didn't really know if they would be able to compete with the Lions as good as they had, and they did, even though the outcome wasn't in our favor. So I'm in a bit of a predicament here. I don't know exactly what to do. But I sat there and I thought about it, and I said, I think I need to change things up a bit. I think I need to do something that hasn't been done before, something that I don't know if it's the right thing to do, if it's legal, and I don't know if it's going to happen. I mean, I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm going to go ahead and just make my predictions. This is going to come as a shock to a lot of people. But Monday night, the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans will play to a tie. Yes, I have the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans playing to a tie. Because here's the thing. I don't think I'm going to be undefeated if I pick the Texans to win. And I certainly don't think I'm going to be undefeated if I pick the Cowboys to win. Now, I am going to say that I am going to be taking a loss either way, because I had both teams, playing for a tie. I mean, I can't just say, hey, if I make the tie, pick the tie and the Texans win, that's not going to be a win for me. It's going to be a loss for me. And I'm also going to say, take a loss if it's the Cowboys that win. And, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans play to a tie. So maybe a controversial decision. Maybe some of y'all are probably going to wondering what in the world am I thinking. Maybe some of y'all are thinking, are you just scared because the Texans haven't been playing well, and they're going up against Cowboys, a game they should win, but they haven't really done well against teams that they should win. Like, are you just scared for that? No, I'm just thinking strategically here, folks. Because in a sense, even though I lose, I still win. Even though I will be taking a big loss either way. So I'm willing to sacrifice an undefeated mark, because again, I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'll say this. If it does happen where both the Cowboys and the Texans play to a tie, I don't know what I'm going to do. So that's what I'm decided to do. I hate doing that. I hate doing it to where I have to have a Houston team tie with a Dallas team. I never like to do that. Never. But from a professional perspective, this is probably the smart thing that I'm going to have to do. I know everybody doesn't like to pick ties, but I'm just going to go ahead and try it. So, all of that being said, that is the way I look at it. So, my winners for Week 11, the Dolphins, the Browns, the Colts, the Vikings, the Packers, the Lions, the Rams, the Ravens, the 49ers, the Falcons, the Chiefs, the Chargers, and, the tie between the Cowboys and the Texans, which you could say both won and both lost, but it will be a loss regardless of who ends up winning the game. So, or if it does happen where they tie, then it's technically a correct pick for me, although it'd be kind of really stupid. it's something I'll probably never do again at this stage. So that is what I am going to do for week 11. And folks, that is going to wrap things up here for episode 43 of Crocking, Locking, and Dropping with the K-Rock. Hope you guys enjoy my thoughts about the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight, as well as my thoughts for the upcoming Texans Cowboys Monday Night Football game. I'm hoping for a Texans win to turn things around, but you just never know with the Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys are a brand. They're a real strong team. I mean, they're not having a great season right now with Dak Prescott getting injured, but just the identity, just the brand, and it just makes you feel like you're going up against the big brother, even though Houston's bigger in terms of overall population. I mean, I'm not talking about the DFW Metroplex here, okay? I mean, that's just, if you look at the list of populated cities, Houston's bigger than Dallas in terms of population. So that's the way I look at it. But yeah, so that's all I got for this edition. Hey guys, remember, subscribe to my YouTube channel at KWCLINE91. That's KW Cline 91. And also to Spotify and Podbean. So that is going to do it for this edition of Crocking, Locking, and Dropping. Thank you guys for listening if you are. And hopefully I can get more viewers eventually. I know I may need to interview some guests for the time being. So we'll see what happens here. Until then, hope you guys have yourselves a great weekend. And I'll see you guys next time on another edition of Crocking, Locking, and Dropping with the K-Rock.